Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort, meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today. That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable. Ah.
In 1957, the U.S. Chemical Corps of Engineers had been producing chemical munitions using the deadly sarin nerve gas to fulfill their stockpile requirements set by the U.S. Department of Defense. After filling these quotas, the Chemical Corps pivoted their means of production to VX nerve gas. VX had the sinister reputation of being 3 times as toxic as sarin when inhaled and almost 1,000 times more toxic when absorbed through the skin, with 1 liter having the theoretical capacity for killing 1 million people. Many of the men who helped in the development and production of these weapons of unparalleled lethality were former Nazis who, just a little more than a decade before, were building weapons that were intended to be used on Allied soldiers during World War II. But even before Berlin had fallen, many of these scientists who were captured by advancing Allied forces had thrown away their allegiance to the Nazi ideology and professed innocence and ignorance of the multitude of war crimes that happened at the weapons testing and production facilities in Nazi Germany. Each country of the Allies was eager to deal with these devils in order to obtain the secrets of the wonder weapons of the Third Reich. This case file joined the theorists as they followed the paper trail from Nazi Reichs to Stars and Stripes in Operation Paperclip.
Welcome to Alien Theorist Theorizing Case File 159 Operation Paperclip. I'm Braden.
I'm Zell.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Andrew.
We're back.
We're back. Dude, I'm drinking these new beverages.
Beverages?
Beverages.
I'm telling you something. I'm going to be meat draw in about 25 minutes.
What kind of beverages are you drinking?
I'm drinking these Black Fly cranberries.
Oh, are they paying us?
Oh,
Are
easy
they
on
paying
the
us? Don't
free
fucking
plug.
mention a name.
Shit, sorry, whoops.
Don't say they're good. Don't say they're good.
I'm drinking your drink here. It's delicious. It's getting me. They're fucking easy.
Is it made by Spotify or else don't say
It's
anything?
made by Spotify, actually. Yeah. Made by @Spotify. I guess this is. Do we talk about that too? This will be the last episode available on all platforms before we go exclusively to Spotify. Join us. Move over. It's a free app. It's easy to use. I recently made the switch. It's not bad, and I wouldn't tell you it's not bad. I would say it's bad if I really didn't like it. I would say it's bad, and we're gonna get them to work on it. But it's actually easier than using Apple Podcasts, in my opinion. I would always have issues downloading them. I didn't on Spotify. It was fucking easy.
It's easy app. It's you can download offline, just like any other podcast app. And another thing, if you're on your computer listening, you push pause, you jump in your car, open Spotify, starts right back up. Same app. Boom. There you go.
Yeah, if Braden says it's easy, it's really easy.
Yeah, it's fucking easy.
I haven't figured out how to download it yet, but once I do, I bet you it's going to be easy.
That's funny because last episode you said you had it figured out. Were you lying?
I thought I did, but it was something completely different.
But yeah, October 16th will be gone. So if you're listening and it disappears, that's where we went. So head
Listen,
over
and
there.
if you want to, if you want to help our show and you don't want to join our Patreon, that's fine. The easiest way to help us is just to download and listen to us free on Spotify. It honestly helps the show more than you would know, and it's easy to do. It's
Follow your boys.
couldn't be easier.
Follow your favorite show over to Spotify. And if you're already on Spotify, tell your friends. Bring them over too.
Nothing changes for you.
Nothing changes. There you go.
You lucky sons of bitches.
Yeah.
Also, got a little shout out I wanted to do. Jessica Fulop wishes her husband, Justin Justerson, a happy second wedding anniversary. What a sweetheart. She's been messaging us all the time to make sure this happened. She messaged us months ago in preparations, and I was like, remind us closer to. And she did. And then I asked some clarifying questions, and she answered them. So, Justin Justerson, you son of a bitch, you got yourself a good wife there. Hold on to her. And what else we got before? Well, let's just get right into Operation Paperclip.
Yeah, we haven't touched on any conspiracy roots in a while. It's been a weird year for conspiracies. We've shied away, but sometimes you find one that's got a lot of merit, and Paperclip it is.
All the merit.
Oh, shit. I forgot. There's also a companion episode to this called Operation Ovechkasim or some shit
How
on
did you
Patreon.
Osavayakim.
Savayakim.
And basically,
That's the Russian version, right?
Russian
Yes.
version of Operation Paperclip. So once you listen to this and you're like, God damn, this is interesting, go to our Patreon. Me and Dan did an episode on the Russian version where we do this whole episode in Russian only. It's awesome.
So is it true, like when you guys did research for that, is it true that they got 2,000 Nazi scientists in one night?
Listen, you got to pay for that. You got to pay for this information. I'm sorry. It's on patreon.com/alien theorist podcast.
They got a lot.
But let's get into the American version, Operation Paperclip.
Operation Paperclip, the granddaddy of conspiracies is what I would call it. If you've ever been down the conspiracy rabbit hole, you've probably heard of Operation Paperclip. Has a ton to do with Nazis, has a ton to do with rocky Nazi science. It's got all the good stuff that you could possibly want. So we get right into it. So taking this back to Operation Paperclip began technically in 1944. Right after the Allies landed at Normandy on June 6th, you had another contingent that landed with them, and it was a unit that was directed by one Samuel Godsmith. And Godsmith was a scientific director for this top secret mission that was codenamed Operation Alsace. And Operation Alsace was actually an offshoot of the Manhattan Project. Now, their job was pretty much to capture, analyze, and recover as much Nazi technology, scientists, architecture, things like this, all of that kind of thing, infrastructure, all of that stuff, and take it back to the Nazis. So any documents they came across, any type of scientific stuff that they could find was to go through Operation Alsace.
That's interesting because one could say that when you were looking at this case, the Allies already know, they were like, it's looking like we're going to win this war. So they were already licking their chops being like, all right, we need to start not only preparations for like our final assaults and whatnot, because we're going to win this thing, but we need to start making plans because we need to make sure that we reap some rewards from this war. So even before anything sealed delivered, they're going like, all right, we got to start making our plans to fucking get our goods because we're going to win this shit and we got to fucking make sure we get better stuff than anyone else.
So first page, do not open the Ark.
Yes,
exactly.
Well, technically, I'm pretty sure that Raiders of the Lost Ark takes place pre-World War II, like 1930s. So they already had the Ark in their possession, technically, at the end of that movie, if you go by that timeline. Unless the Nazis stole it from them back at some point.
Probably.
I don't know. But if you take Raiders of the Lost Ark as your source, then we already had the Ark.
I mean,
but
that's what I watched to study for this, so I'm fucking
that
ready.
makes sense.
Dialed in.
I hate snakes. I got it all. I'm good.
So the Allies begin their sweep across France in November in Strasbourg. Goudsmit actually learns that Nazis had begun their experiments. They had done some of their experiments at least, and he had good evidence that showed that they had been testing certain types of like survival experiments, the cold water experiments, the salt water things. Those he was coming across documents that referred to Nazi human experimentation. So there was Goudsmit had a good idea of what was going on already, and this was 1944. Goudsmit learns of one Nazi scientist known as Dr. Kurt Blom, and he was the deputy surgeon general of the Third Reich. And he learns of another scientist named the other surgeon general, who is General Walter Schreiber. And so these guys come into play a little bit later. These dudes were pretty fucked up dudes. They were bad dudes. And so, yeah, let me just get out of the way that like researching for this, I fucking hate Nazis. Like I hated Nazis before. Like I fucking hate Nazis now. Like
way to toe the Spotify line, Dan.
With the fury of 1,000 suns, I hate Nazis.
Dan, did you play all of Castle Wolfensteins to kill them all?
I'm about to. Like I own the prequel and the other ones, and I'm about to load up all the Wolfenstein games.
Just run through them
like nonstop for a week. Like I am all set. Anyways, so about 1945, the Ally assault is going well. They're discovering tons of caches of weapons and documents. They come across one of the crucial installments known as Nordhausen. We talk about this in Operation Paperclip. Nordhausen was the facility where it was one of the major production facilities for the V2 rocket program. So it was a facility built predominantly underground. Majority of the facilities were all underground, and a lot of the work that was done, probably about 90% of the work that was done at Nordhausen was slave labor. Like they took prisoners of war, a lot of the Jewish prisoners, any concentration camp prisoners they took them, and it is a pretty nasty place to work, but this is where they did a majority of the constructions of their V2 rockets. So you had scientists who were involved in the construction of this facility. The V2 rocket scientists included people like George Riquet, Walter Dernberger. We'll talk about this guy later. Everybody's favorite Werner von Braun. And Arthur Rudolph. So these were four of the hundreds of scientists that were stationed at this base, who weren't there at the time.
Right.
So now, March 12th, 1945, the Allies are coming into this area. Werner von Braun is actually evacuated from the area. He was leaving an area, and he was nearly actually killed in an auto accident. His driver ended up nodding off at the wheel, and his car ended up veering off the road and took a dive off a 40-foot embankment and then crashed near a railroad track where he ended up breaking his arm.
Was he using slave labor for a driver as well, or?
Guy's been pulling nights all month.
Oh, they're all
just
jacked
exhausted.
up on freaking amphetamines, probably.
Yeah, exactly.
24 hours a day.
It's weird to think. It's weird to think where if that had that been fatal for like Werner von Braun, how history may have been reshaped.
No kidding.
Probably would have went to the moon, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's weird to think about that one
That's
guy
crazy.
and that one incident. Like, had he, I'm not gonna sit here and be like, thank God he didn't, because he was also a terrible person and he could have deserved it.
Yeah.
So it's a real tough one when talking about Werner von Braun.
Well, he's the mastermind of the V2 rocket, who was the president of the time, said if they got there 6 months later, the capacity of them to like manufacture these V2 rockets would have made the war almost unwinnable, because they wouldn't have been able to like destroy the incoming armies, and you could not shoot these rockets down. They were like the ultimate defense.
Well, the thing about them, right, was they were the first like long range guided ballistic missile, right?
Yeah. That's what I mean.
So this was like, there's nothing else like it at this time.
Yeah, they were still developing the technology. Like the technology wasn't perfected. They would launch these V2s, and if you were lucky when they shot these things off, a lot of these rockets were fired into. You had V1s and V2s that were launched into London at the time. So from France across the English Channel into parts of Britain, you had them launching these guided missiles and kind of guided in the rudimentary sense. But if you were lucky, they would hit their targets. There's plenty of records. There's plenty of accounts of where these rockets like exploded mid-flight, or they missed their targets by miles. Like it wasn't a perfect technology.
It was always a win because they're like, did it hit Britain? Technically, yeah. Nailed it.
Yeah, but if they had 6 more months, they're saying like they might have perfected the technology better to make the rockets that much better, and then it would make liberating like Europe that much harder. So they got there pretty much just in time.
Yeah, and that's a very, that is a plausible scenario at the time when they were thinking about it. It definitely took a lot of labor to create these rockets. I think they were churning out these rockets at maybe like 2 or 3 a day or something. But von Braun had this idea where he wanted to be able to up production at somewhere like 200 rockets per day, something that is crazy. And people have remarked that, if historians have remarked that if von Braun had the idea that he wanted to increase the production of his rockets and these weapons, he was definitely aware of the amount of labor that it would require, and a lot of the labor which was done by slaves. So you can't say that he was unaware of a lot of people during the time the U.S. government tried to argue that Wernher von Braun had no idea or had very limited scope of how much slave labor was going on within his facilities.
I mean, like, they had the ultimate encouragement to work fast, right? The 5 slowest slaves of the day were hung in front of everybody.
Yes.
Like you don't want to be those guys. Like, work faster.
Like, what did they expect us to believe, that every time Wernher von Braun walked into the factory, they had like rows of soldiers goose stepping and waving their arms so much that he couldn't see side to side to what the fuck was going on in the plant? Like he was a fucking high ranking member. Like, he fucking knew even just if you were like, to be like, oh, there's no evidence that he knew anything, I'd be like, I don't believe you for a second. It just doesn't pass the sniff test for me at all, with no evidence at all. If you're like, this guy was just making them, he had no idea how they were being made, and I'm sure he wouldn't have approved. I'm like, motherfucker knew how they were being made. They're his fucking babies. Like, if you're creating these things, there's no way you're just sitting in a fucking somewhere off and being like, I hope these are getting made properly in this factory that I'm never going to visit, and I don't know what's going on in there, but I hope they're doing my designs perfectly.
Workers' compensation rights and, paid time off and holidays. Yep, they all got all that stuff.
I mean, they're lucky if they got food.
Exactly.
So
Crazy.
Von Braun, as he was recovering from his broken arm from his auto accident, he was informed by his personal assistant and other intelligence officers that were attending him that the Allies' push into Europe was unstoppable. Like, they were going to arrive within days and take over the facility and occupy the area. So von Braun had the foresight. He had the idea to he instructed his personal assistant and one other person, I believe, to take the documents about the development of the V2 and to hide them, right? Because these were going to be, von Braun was like, well, if they're going to take over, they're going to want these things. He knew this. And you'll see this with a lot of other Nazi scientists at the time. They knew that the Allies wanted this technology. They knew that it was going to be useful afterwards, because von Braun at this point, not only was he thinking about how his technology could be used for weapons, but they were also considering the possibility of spaceflight. Like, that was a lot of times, I think, in von Braun's like later years, like, he'll be asked about these things, and he was already thinking about space, exploring space with his technology.
The best part about this is the fact that he hid these documents in the most Nazi evil place that you could possibly hide anything. It like almost fits into like fiction. He hid them in a fucking graveyard.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
Like, dug a fucking grave in a graveyard and buried them. Like, it does not get any more Nazi than that.
So now you have the Allies pushing their way through Europe, and March 23rd, you have the Allies have reached the city of Bonn, I believe, and this is where they had Samuel Gaudsmit and Operation Alsace had taken a group here. They had taken up looking for this university where at least one Nazi scientist had been known to be working, and they had recovered documents which essentially showed them a list of all of the Nazi scientists in Germany at the time. So not just scientists, but engineers, doctors, technicians. This is what was known as the Ausenberg list.
So now this list had to be made because I guess from what I was reading was the fact that Hitler didn't really take kindly to a lot of intellectuals that went against his mandates and ideologies and stuff like that. So it was kind of hard for physicists and like doctors and stuff like that, unless they bought in. Like if you're not a fucking card carrying Nazi and you didn't buy in completely, he would ship them off to do like menial labor jobs and like go to the front lines. And then when they realized they started shitting the bed and they needed all the help they could get, they're like, listen, we need to create a fucking list with all the people that we fucking sent away that could aid us now. Like von Braun at this time was in fucking jail because Himmler put him in jail. Right? Like, so he's got, you know what I mean? So he's shit in the bed. So what do we know about Hitler right now? He doesn't like nerds. Kicked them all out.
Yeah.
And then he basically shit his pants. At the beginning, he's basically like, well, you know what? None of these guys have blue eyes or the blonde hair, and none of them have the big muscles. We don't need them, so we're going to send them to the front lines. Start losing. Guy shits his pants and starts calling the nerds.
Recall the nerds.
You know, you can't kick out the nerds, man. You can't.
Now, the story of them, how the list was actually found to them, is this true that like a Polish like lab tech found it in a toilet and he was like, hey guys, this looks important. Here, take this list. That's what I read.
Before the Nazis evacuated the university where they had set up most of their research in that area, they were trying to destroy as many documents as they found. So a majority of the documents were burned, but they also thought a good way to destroy documents is to flush them down the toilet, which I don't think is a great idea.
I have to interject.
It's bullshit.
Because let's think about this for a second. Just not even on any other aspect of this, other than this list with Germany's most important scientists was deemed shitty enough and didn't make the cut to get burned that it got flushed. How much information did we lose by them destroying and burning documents? I can't even begin to fathom the knowledge that was lost.
Man, it just doesn't, I don't know. I don't fucking buy it. I just don't. This is the golden fucking ticket. This is the official cheat code of Nazi Germany.
Well, it's just a list of all the scientists, right?
Exactly right.
I don't think it was deemed extremely important information because this list, I guess, it had been distributed throughout. It was kind of like a contact list. It was really just like who to call if you kind of need these things.
Was Bob Lazar on that list? Was he on that fucking telephone list?
I'm not even sure he was born yet.
Well, that's how he cracked. That's how you know he was there. No, I don't know, man. Just like, you know, some random Polish janitor comes up with like, are you guys looking for this list? Because I found it in the toilet. Like, do you want to see it?
It's kind of wet.
Like,
it's a
little bit soggy. It's a little bit soggy, but you see there's Werner von Braun on here.
There's some names. Maybe they're of interest to you. Wink, wink.
Yeah, but if it's just a directory, it doesn't really have any classified information. It's just a list of names.
Right. It was listener names and addresses.
But this was the list that they were like, this was Hitler's last ditch effort to protect Germany, was by gathering this list of fucking scientists.
All right. Devil's advocate. Let's say this list is just names. They don't know it is, but then when they're giving it to, you know, whatever the Allies analysts, someone's going through that list and goes, hold on a second. I know a couple of these names on this list are scientists. I think this is a list of all their scientists.
Yeah, I'm pretty
They just
sure
go,
that's how
"Ooh."
that shook out. Like they're like, I know this name, I know this name.
The best scientist,
All of
number
these
one,
guys.
Werner von
Number
Braun.
one.
Number two, I don't think it said that. Top 5,000 scientists in Germany.
Sehr Sebastian. It's not
Yeah.
the Ossenberg list. It's the
Yeah.
Awesomeberg list.
And Berg means scientist in Germany, I think.
Obviously.
In German.
Aside from this list, just a couple months before, or a couple months after, in April, or actually just the next month over, the United States Army would actually come upon what they had found. When they had people look it over, they had scientists look it over, engineers. They figured that they had found the most scientifically advanced aeronautics laboratory in the world. This was called the Hermann Göring Aeronautical Research Center at Vulcan Road, and they had never heard of this place before. Like, it wasn't on any United States intelligence, British intelligence. They had no idea of this place. Like, this facility is where the Nazis tested all of their secret weapons. Like, here they were testing, they had these advanced wind tunnels where like when the scientists look at it, they're like, this is where they were planning to build craft that would break the sound barrier, which hadn't been done yet. So they're like, this is where they were testing materials and vehicles. Like, these are where they built their jet aircraft.
So how did they get led to that? Was that on the list as well?
They had never found, they just found it. They just came across it.
So there's so much convenience here in these two situations that just baffle me.
Well, when you're rolling across the whole place looking for Nazis, and you're rolling through forests and tanks and stuff, and you're running into these, probably have roads that run out into some of these facilities. I mean,
Werner von Braun, dressed up like a Polish janitor, wrote down a list of all his friends and went up to the Americans and be like, I think this list might be somewhat important to you. Maybe you should look at it.
I don't think Werner von Braun would dress up exactly as a janitor, because most of the scientists who the V2 rocket scientists and stuff, after the Allies started pushing forward into Germany and those areas, they evacuated out to like a bunch of ski chalets in the Bavarian Alps. Like, they were all just hanging out there until the war was over. They were just like, they were hanging out at all these spa, health, hotels and things out there, like 5-star resorts. This is where they were hanging out. So until the war ended.
What you're trying to tell me right now is the Nazi scientists were the real victors of World War II, not the Allies. Like, these guys have the cushiest fucking gig I've ever seen in my life.
I hate to say kinda, but
seriously.
kinda.
Like, these guys went from Third Reich to, the United States.
First class, baby.
Like, it's fucking crazy.
Well, not until they officially began recognizing, or formally recognizing, the use or the utility of having German scientists work for you. So in 1945, on July 5th, there was a classified memorandum that was circulated to the United States government, and it was titled with the subject, Exploitation of German Specialists in Science and Technology in the United States. The Joint Chiefs of Staff had finally approved on paper the Nazi scientist program. They're like, this memo was informing it was making clear that the importance of recovering Nazi scientists and technology was like second to none. That was like, we need to do this, and it needs to happen. This actual memo, and we can talk about this a little bit later. Like, everybody likes to think that the U.S. government was completely complicit in all of the things that happened. But the thing is, I'm not justifying it, but I'm just trying to add context, is that the U.S. government post World War II was not all in lockstep.
No,
there were factions within the government. There were tons of military operations, intelligence operations that were operating in parallel in post-war, post-victory Germany at this time.
Against
and
executive
nobody
orders.
really knew what was going on.
Just crazy to me. Like, get into it later, but like, when the president of the United States is coming out openly against this operation and it still goes through, like, it just.
Well, President Truman at the time, he didn't even know about this memo. He wasn't even made aware of the initiative, like started in 1945. Like they didn't even tell them. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, which are all the highest ranking military members of the United States military, didn't even tell them.
Are we talking about Overcast?
This is still like, yeah, we're still in kind of Overcast. It hasn't been named Paperclip yet. It hasn't earned the name yet. So the Joint Chiefs of Staff made it that they would put the Military Intelligence Division of the War Department, G2, in charge of this operation. So this would become what was known as Operation Overcast, which is kind of it's another precursor to Operation Paperclip.
Right.
So on this list, they actually didn't just put scientists and engineers and things, but they also added the names of Nazi bureaucrats, businessmen, accountants, lawyers, anybody who would have, knowledge of the inner workings of the Third Reich.
Let's just. This is so wild in war times that, to me, the President Truman goes, "No Nazis safe. We are going to." Every single one of them is going to pay for their crimes. We are not going to help any Nazi member that has done war crimes. And that's it. Executive order. We're not doing, none of this shit is happening under my watch. And then the military's like, yeah, well, execute this operation. We don't give a fuck. Operation We Don't Give a Fuck is commencing.
Well, it just goes to show you, obviously he's not pulling the strings.
Right? Exactly.
It's just, and that's like, I'm sure
There's
we'll get into it later.
Dude, there's a shadow government. There's a shadow government right there.
Exactly.
It proves it.
And you're going to tell me that this fucking list that got us with the name on it, that got us to the motherfucking moon, just randomly was floating in the top of a fucking toilet. And some rando was like, hey man, this might be interesting. Want to have a look?
Well,
no.
Okay, well, you keep saying that. So how did they get the list then? How'd they get the names?
Well, exactly. That's what I'm wondering. Like those names got into their hands for a fucking reason. Same reason why they got the fucking jobs that they got. Same reason why when the fucking president of the United States came out against this and said, we're not doing this. No Nazi war criminals are going to fucking be brought into the United States of America, protected and given fucking jobs, but yet they still were.
Okay, so we're going conspiracy route. So you're saying
100%.
A shadow government playing both sides of the war, maybe they're financial or maybe whoever they are, they see the tide turning in the war. They're like, okay, the Nazi party we've been supporting for our personal gain is being defeated. The scientists that discover all this technology are valuable. Let's just push them to the new superpower emerging, the United States of America, and we'll continue to pull the strings from behind the curtain. Is that what you're saying?
Because what are they on the brink of? Like Dan said, they did it with this aerospace fucking facility that they found. What were the Nazis on the fucking brink of?
Well,
You're talking about space travel?
Space travel.
Well, space travel. Did the V2 make it? The V2 didn't make it to space yet, did it?
No, there are reports that perhaps the Allies had recovered some plans, or they had interrogated some scientists that made claims that the Nazis had been already constructing rockets to launch into space, and there was kind of like drawing board or blueprints for rockets that would even go to Mars at that time.
Right. Well, it's not a stretch, right? If they got rockets that can shoot 1,000 miles, and they got the start of like jet aircraft, there's no way those scientists were like, I bet you we can get to orbit. That was on their mind. Like, that was coming. If they didn't get beat and the research kept going, that was on their mind.
It's too far. When I think about this, I go like, well, it's not like unbelievable to say that the Nazis had big plans, because like plans were found about Die Glocke, right? The time traveling Nazi bell. So it's like they had big plans and big ambitions, but it's like how much got destroyed before the Allies got their hands on it, right? Were there better plans? Were there better models than what we currently know, because it was destroyed in that period of time to make sure the Allies didn't get it?
Right.
So in September of 1945, you have formed what is known as the Joint Intelligence Committee, the JIC. The JIC is remarked on by some historians to be one of the most kind of secretive, or it's one of these organizations that they said it's really hard to pin down, because it was always shifting. Like there was committees within subcommittees and people just doing pretty much anything that they wanted at this time. I mean, after a period of war, there's absolute bureaucratic chaos. So there's just, you have a bunch of like people just kind of doing whatever they want. But this JIC actually advised the Joint Chiefs of the US, and they made estimates. They gave them estimates and numbers that the Soviet Union was the next biggest threat. 100% guaranteed them that they were going to postpone open conflict with the West. Like they told the Joint Chiefs, and they made the military aware that relations with the Soviet Union were untenable. There's no way that the philosophies, the politics would mesh, and that eventually war with the Soviet Union in their eyes was inevitable. And they said that they gave them numbers where they said that the Soviet Union would probably be able to rebuild its military arsenal by 1952 to be back at complete fighting strength and then ready. And then at that time, it would turn its resources against the Western countries, Western capitalist countries.
Well, how convenient is this? So this is where you get the little conspiracy is. So the United States enters World War II. They amass this gigantic like war machine. They like all their factories, the whole country is put to work through the war, right? It's a boom. Like the whole country's put to work. The war is ended. They have all this industry built. They need a new target. So now the war is over. The whole economy is now based on constructing this war machine. They need a new enemy. It so happens that the Soviets, how many people what did they lose? Like 25 million people?
The Soviet Union,
yeah.
17 million.
Like millions and millions of people. Like it's unbelievable what's the price the Soviet Union paid. And then the ideology difference of communism. They're like, okay, the war's over. We have this huge industry of arms manufacturing. What's the new enemy? We have to have a next target almost. Like all of a sudden now it's Soviet.
So you're saying that that's the beginning of like the military industrial complex? Is the end of World War II and then being like some powers that be or some businessmen are like, yo, if we're not fighting, we're gonna be fucked. And that's the start of this right here is this portion of time right here where they're just direct. We need something else to fight.
Well, that was like, I don't know. Have you ever watched the True History of the United States, the Oliver Stone documentary? This is what he talks about is how when the war ended, like they had this war machine that needed to continue or the economy would drop. And then the Soviets, because of like the Iron Curtain came down, there was no information in or out. So it was like easy to do that. And because what he says in the documentary is because the United States did that, the Soviets did the same. And then it just started a 25-year war, 30-year war.
I constantly question what I believe on this because I'm like from the West. And listen, I'm not saying I'm pro-Russia. I'm not a Russian operative, but I'm just saying is like,
Are you? Aren't you?
We're much closer to the U.S. and you know what I mean? Like the Western ideologies, they're telling us what to believe of like, this was the threat and we had to believe that. But I'm like, how much of what we've been taught has been propaganda from that military industrial complex, right? Because I'm sure if you like people from Russia have a completely different fucking view of that timeline than we do. So it's interesting. It's always interesting to me of like, okay, well, whose propaganda is closer to the truth?
It's like it's impossible to know 100% truth. I think, but so let's just sum it up real quick, and then we'll take a beer break. So the Allies are winning the war. They have their team of scientists and engineers falling behind the army, collecting all Nazi technology and research that they can find. We get to where we are now. They're collecting the scientists. They've started Operation Overcast. The JIC is now it's going to be renamed Paperclip, and this is when we start to bring. This is when the migration of the Nazis into America begins. But we'll get to that right after a quick beer break. Be right back.
The comfort of your favorite seat is now your comfy car-selling command center, thanks to Carvana.
It doesn't get any better than this.
Your favorite seat's the best spot in the house. Make it even better by entering your license plate or VIN and getting a real offer in minutes.
There really is no place like home.
And speaking of home, Carvana will pick up your car from yours after you finalize your offer. Visit Carvana.com or download the app and sell your car from your comfy place.
Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today.
And we're back.
So the Joint Chiefs and the Joint Intelligence Committee have officially recognized the utility of bringing over German scientists. So they begin this program, which is Operation Overcast, to find a way to emigrate the Nazi scientists over to the United States and able to bring them over. Originally, it was planned to be temporary. They wanted to bring the scientists over, pretty much squeeze them for as much information as they could, and then, send them back to Germany. That was the original plan.
Why would you bother bringing them all the way over? Why wouldn't you just interrogate them there? Like you've already divided Berlin into sections, and the United States owns a section of fucking Berlin.
No, it's easy.
Yeah, dude. It's we all know why. It's because that was temporary was never a fucking thing. That was just a way to bring it here. That's if I was fucking poor on the street and I'm like, Andrew, I got to move in temporarily. And you're like, okay. And then soon I'm living on your couch for free for the next 4 months. You're like, what the fuck, dude? This was supposed to be temporary. And I'm like, it is.
But exactly
I'll
what you're
die
saying.
eventually.
It's definitely bullshit because at this point in time, Truman has a fucking travel ban on fucking immigrants who were part of the Nazi party. Like that was illegal. They weren't allowed to bring them over. Like you could have easily went within the fucking law and did these interrogations and all this bullshit in fucking Europe or in Berlin, wherever, but instead you dragged them all the way to the United States.
Well, yeah, that was kind of the thing within the scientific community and things like that, and military community. They knew that you could recover the equipment. You could bring it back to the United States. You could try to rebuild the V2 rocket, but that didn't mean that you knew how to fly it. They knew that they needed the scientists there. They needed their expertise to fully put the thing together.
No,
it's not all just bolts and screws.
No,
they know they needed the scientists. Expertise.
The first couple boats came over and they dropped all these fucking rockets and shit, like all these parts. And they're like, all right, guys, build it. And they're like, we don't understand German. I don't know what the fuck to do here.
Dude, that's exactly it.
Yeah, that's it.
These are all half plans.
Yeah, what do you mean?
Well, yeah, you find all the schematics and plans for the rockets, and maybe some rockets, maybe they're not full rockets, and then you drop them off of your engineers who have never made a successful rocket, and you're like, fix this. And they're like, nope.
Fix what? What is it?
What
this
is
scrap
that?
metal? I don't know.
It just goes to show you how they were legitimately light years fucking ahead of everyone else at this point in time.
Bringing the Nazi scientists over for the rocket program saved them 20 years of research and development of them trying to.
How? That's fucking crazy.
20 years ahead.
Has there ever been that large of a gap?
Well, I would actually kind of try to put that in try to think of the idea of 20 years of research and development from 1930. Their frame of reference would be different. If you think of today, what 20 years was before
crazy.
Now, 20 years ago, what was it? 2000s.
2000.
Early 2000s.
Oh, we're
These
light
guys
years ahead today.
These guys are playing fucking. We're playing N64s and they're playing fucking PS fucking 5s.
Dude, exactly.
Right.
It's crazy.
But their frame of reference would be different. So
listen, and imagine they're not sharing that PS5 technology with us. I'd be fucking pissed too.
It's crazy, man.
So by the end of 1946, about 160 Nazi scientists had been moved to the United States, secreted into the United States of America. The single largest group was actually the over 100, about 115 rocket scientists that they sent to Fort Bliss, Texas, which were led by Wernher von Braun.
Oh, he comes back.
So he took his Werner von Braun was actually very, you can read stuff about this of how cooperative that Werner von Braun was with the Allies. Like he turned himself in to the Allies. He knew his value. A lot of the interrogators would remark on his remarkable amount of hubris. Like he would go in there when he surrendered himself, like he was taking pictures with the Allies, like the people who were supposed to be arresting him. Like he was taking pictures with soldiers, smiling, cracking jokes with these fuckers.
He's
like
a rock
he was
star.
Everybody's dying to get a picture with Dr. Strangelove. Like, let's be honest here.
Right. And and Werner von Braun was actually the the model for Dr. Strangelove. If you've seen that movie, Werner von Braun was the character. The character is based on him. So they actually managed to launch their first V2 rocket on U.S. soil at White Sands military base in April of 1946. They said that it climbed to about 3 miles, and that's where one of the fins actually fell off.
Can't be perfect on the first try.
But this was enough to inspire von Braun to actually draft a memo. I don't know if it was ever sent to the Robert Oppenheimer, father of the atomic bomb, director of Los Alamos, and he proposed the idea of taking his missile and his atomic bomb and putting them together. You've got a missile, you've got a bomb, put them together.
They make a baby.
Missile bomb.
They make a baby. It's fucking science, man. They made a baby.
You bring over a Nazi scientist, like rocket scientist, whose main mission was to build rockets to blow people up. And the first thing he gets to the States, he says, hey, I have a way to blow up people even better.
Yeah,
I see what you're doing
the
here.
best idea.
I see what you're doing here.
I say, do you speak my language?
I got this wicked idea. We're going to put these bomb and this missile together. We're going to get it done. And we're going to get it done really fast because if the workers don't work fast enough, we're going to hang them. This is genius.
Like,
now Werner, on America, you can't just hang people like that.
Give them time.
Scheiße.
Now, the biggest issue that the U.S. military was having with bringing over these scientists is with the State Department, because if you wanted to bring over people to work in the United States, you had to issue them visas. So going through the State Department was extremely important. And the State Department had their own officials that worked with the JIC and the Joint Chiefs, like trying to get these people over there. But there was resistance.
Just bring them in through Mexico. Problem solved. Bingo, bango, bongo.
Mexico, Canada. Give them a fake passport. Boom. There you go.
Easy peas.
Well, originally, Army intelligence officers who were working and reviewing the Office of Military Government United States security reports for certain scientists, which were either deemed pretty much like high offenders, people who had either won awards or made important contributions to the Nazi Party. Like these people, also people who were deemed Nazi ideologues, like people who were hardcore Nazis, which is a majority of the scientists that worked for the Third Reich. These people were completely under, at the time, they were absolutely ineligible for entry into the United States. Under the current wording during that administration, you couldn't, if you were a Nazi or you ever believed in Nazis, you even said Nazi, you would never, if you even looked at the swastika, you weren't coming back to the United States.
Yeah, hence all these cover stories of I didn't know what was happening in my own factory where everyone was creating my designs that I created from scratch. I had no idea. What? What was happening? Oh, God. The horror. Bullshit.
Intelligence officers working within the Army came up with this workaround that those scientists that were identified as people who were, ardent Nazis, these files would not be presented to the State Department right away. Their plan and their workaround was to actually
to lie.
Pretty much. Yeah. Well, pretty much. Well, not lie. Again, this is the United States government. This is, well, not just the United States government. I would say bureaucracy. It's just their idea was that they would take these men, instead of issuing them visas or having them apply for visas, they would have these men come to the United States and remain under military custody. So
technically, they're prisoners of war.
Right. And so these the files of the files that they found most difficult are these ones that they identified as would probably be problems or problematic in getting the United States getting U.S. visas, was they would attach paper clips to these files. So from then on,
I love when they say the name in the movie.
Would become Operation Paperclip.
Paperclip. It's whatever. They just see something like that'll work. Just look to the left. Right. There it is. Paperclip.
So if you're wondering where they get the idea, somebody had said that the Army names their projects after anything to the left, or to the right. Like, they actually named this after where, the paperclip. So it's Operation Paperclip.
Everyone, Operation Look to your left. Headphones. Brutal.
Outlets.
Operation Outlet.
Piss jug.
I wish you were lying. You're not.
It's not. So 1946, things start changing. So you have a memo that is circulated by the Assistant Secretary of War, Howard Peterson, which cites America's national interests. And they would change the language of the core principle that guided Paperclip. And so bringing over these Nazi scientists. And so they changed no known or alleged war criminals and no active Nazis. They would change it to no persons who would try to plan for the resurgence of German military potential. And that would allow them, they figured, to bypass the departments that were issuing visas.
I mean, like, if you look back in history, though, like, yes, let's be honest, like what the Nazis did, it was completely fucked up. They did horrible, terrible, heinous things that are completely unforgivable. But when you look back in time, like, especially, like, I thought about this first when we went back to when we did the Dragon Emperor, Qin Shuang. He did the same thing. Like, when he would conquer people, he would enlist members of the fucking people that he conquered as high-ranking generals and shit in his army. You look at Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan did the exact same fucking thing. You know what I mean? And I'm sure those are just two names that I know of, but I'm sure it was common practice. Well, those are only two that I can name, but I'm a fucking dummy. Dan's smart.
The spoils of war are more than just resources and like money. It's also like knowledge and like people with know-how, right? Like if you can take those.
Yeah, exactly. Zell's 100% correct. The philosophy had kind of changed within the military. Like the military higher ups after World War I, I'm pretty sure, or that they had changed kind of the rules, like Geneva Conventions or whatever. I can't remember exactly, but they had outlawed looting. So you couldn't loot anything beyond like token, like you could take like token treasures. I think that's why you get some, World War II veterans came back with like samurai swords and like weird shit they looted from like Reichs, wherever. But they had kind of changed the philosophy that if we can't take reparations, if that's not going to work in the form of monetary compensation, then why shouldn't we reap the benefits of the research and technology that this country had used or had planned to use against us?
And especially if they had knowledge of that, I'm going to butcher it, but it was like the Osavayakin, that what the fucking Soviets were doing. If they were aware of that, right? If they knew that they were snatching up Nazi scientists, we're going to be like, well, fuck, we need all the Nazi nerds too.
Well, they said like, that's pretty much how they justified it is they thought of it as the lesser of two evils. Like, okay, if we don't get all these guys, either they're going to go to the Soviets or the Soviets are just going to take all of them and take all that advancement that they have. So they're almost like they're put between a rock and a hard place. Like, okay, we take these war criminals who have super advanced knowledge of rocketry and weaponry and like futuristic weapons that we don't have, or we give that to the other major player in winning the war and they take everything.
I don't know if that's I don't know if that works that well, because I don't know you can justify it that way, because Operation WWII or whatever the fuck it's called was in 1946. So these operations by the states have already begun. So you could make the argument for the other side to be like, Operation WWII only happened, and it happened completely different, very fast, very quickly, with a lot of people involved. You could say that it happened that way for them because they realized what the states were doing.
Yeah.
And they're like, holy shit, we are behind the 8 ball. We thought we were fucking splitting up this pizza pie here of Berlin. These motherfuckers are grabbing the scientists. We now have to combat them on that. Like, you could make that argument.
I'm sure, like, I'm assuming that they didn't have the pleasure of looking at the Ausenberg list. Like, I know the list was initially given to MI6, but I don't know if
like that list had been distributed throughout the Third Reich. So throughout Germany and other places like that, people knew of that list. Again,
listen,
it was
in toilet bowls all over Germany.
It was like this is a list of contacts that you would have posted on like a bulletin board. Like, you would have them up there. Like, hey, if I want to know about sarin gas, I need to talk to Dr. Otto von Ambros. Like,
you know what it was?
This guy. Like,
here's what it is. I thought of it. Hitler hated nerds so much, he actually had all their names written on toilet paper. That was just in every household in Germany. He's like, nerds, now everyone will wipe their ass with
Vipes
you.
asses with these shit tickets
with these
nerds on
nerds.
it.
With all these nerds' names. And that's why every single person had this list. Because there's just the toilet paper in Germany.
We've definitely talked at length about Werner von Braun and the rocketry programs and things like this. While researching this topic, I kind of asked the question, or I thought of the question. I was like, okay, so how far were the Allies really behind in technology to the Germans? Now, why didn't we have rockets? Why didn't we have these things? The most common answer they came up with from historians and things. Well,
yep.
Aliens.
Yep.
That's who wanted that list to get out.
I mean, that was the number one answer. Number two answer was that these weapons, that the weapons that the Nazis were building, they were attributing, or they were dedicating so many resources to these weapons and things like this, but they didn't work as well. They weren't like functional. They were exotic weapons. Like, these weapons were, again, the V2 wasn't a supremely effective weapon. It was a terror weapon. Yes, it's fucking terrifying that you're flying a super rocket, but it wasn't able to strategically hit strategic targets.
Not yet.
If you launched it, you'd be lucky to get it within a mile.
Yeah, but it wasn't just
where you wanted to put it.
It wasn't just the V2 rocket, though. They've been ahead on every aspect. Like, look at World War I when they came up with the fucking machine guns.
Well, not necessarily. During World War II, like the Brits, they knew about rocket technology. They knew about these things. Even though the Nazis had constructed things like the Messerschmitts, the Emmys, was it 62s? I can't remember their jet aircraft, and they flew those on combat missions against Allied aircraft, like aircraft bombers, and they had a pretty outstanding record. But the fact was, you couldn't keep those things up in the air. Like the jet engine technology, it just wasn't there. They had dedicated all these resources to build these technologies, but they just didn't have. It wasn't sustainable at the time.
At the time,
like they. Yeah, you couldn't keep those things for up in the air for more than like 5 minutes. The Messerschmitts, the rocket
what if
powered
5
aircraft.
minutes it was?
They would keep it up
fantastic
there for
5
5 minutes, and then it would have to glide. It would actually have to glide back.
Listen,
to
Dan,
their
what's
air
wrong
bases.
with 5 minutes?
5 minutes of pure
That's a lot of
intimidation.
time, Dan. That's a lot of
Not
time.
when you
That's a
have,
lot.
like, 60
Dan, that's a long
bombers.
time.
Like when you have 20 bombers flying in formation, and you've got
Hey, man, how much of Europe can you cover in 5 minutes? Let's be honest.
stones throw away every country.
Exactly.
5 minutes in heaven's better than no minutes in heaven.
Yeah, brother.
Damn straight.
That's what I'm saying, though.
So-
If they didn't...
That's coming from the Minutemen, Dan.
Yeah. If the technology wasn't quite there yet, but say they had another 6 months or another year, and they found a way to produce these more reliably, they were way ahead of anything that Allies had, though. They were much farther ahead.
Yeah, they were ahead of us in some technologies. Rocketry, not again. I will say not so much because I'm pretty sure the rocket technology was on the table in Britain and the United States. Like we had built jet engines. We just figured that we just didn't need them because producing them would take too much resources and things like that. It wasn't functional or whatever. But where the Nazis were very ahead of us was biological and chemical research. Like that's what we really wanted. The Nazis were like miles ahead of us. They had invented sarin gas. Like if you look it up, like sarin, like SARIN, sarin nerve gas, the nerve agent. It was invented.
It was derived. What was the first? It was derived from the different gas though, tabin or.
Right. Tabin was like their super secret one that nobody had known about. They didn't even hear about until the Allies began like interrogating Nazi scientists like after they had taken them prisoner. Like they figured it out later, like in the late 1940s about this tabun gas. And the tabun gas was a type of, was it organophosphate, almost like a pesticide type of chemical. And the Nazis, I don't think they had ever planned to really deploy them because if they wanted to, they could have. They had them. They were. I think that's also kind of a question that I didn't really fully explore for this thing is why the Nazis didn't deploy these things, because it wasn't so much that the Allies wanted to know how to make these weapons. They wanted to know how to make them in industrial quantities. Right. You know, because the plan was after World War II, again, like the JIC had told the United States, like we're going to have to go up against the Soviets soon. And the Soviets will be prepared for total war. They made a point to drive home the concept that we would be fighting a war with no limits. Like it would be atomic, biological, or chemical. So ABC
fucking
warfare was going to be on
match.
the table. Yeah.
Triple threat.
Hardcore.
TLC, baby. Ladder match.
But like,
what's
like
the one where they
too,
alley match? What the fuck?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Think about, you know what I mean? Like, it sounds like these guys didn't have every opportunity to work on this type of shit, though. Like, if you look at Von Braun, for instance, like he got fucking put in jail. You know what I mean? For how long was it? 2 months before the end of the war by Himmler, because Himmler wanted to seize control of the rocket production. You know what I mean? Like these guys still had to work under these fucking nut jobs that wanted to be fucking in total control and to be pulling the strings.
Do you know what that kind of tells me though? When I read that and I was looking into that, what it looked like to me, why Werner von Braun was in jail. That seems ridiculous. I think Werner von Braun was such an intellect that he knew the like end was nigh kind of thing. I think he put him in jail because he knew that Werner von Braun was like making steps to make sure he would be protected in the inevitable loss of the Germans.
Well, that's what the excuse that Himmler gave was the fact that he was spouting off defeatist fucking
exactly.
comments.
But that I think it more so was that he was prepping instead of like putting all his resources into like continuing to help the Germans. I think he was like padding his own like escape essentially.
Digging graves and burying fucking documents.
No, burying documents. And that's why I think he got thrown in jail. I think because he got found out that he was looking out for number one. And Himmler was like, fuck this guy. Throw him in jail. Fuck him. He's useless. And then, it just turned out that he was too valuable to leave in there.
Throw him in jail. I'm the rocket man now.
I
am the rocket
controls
man.
of rockets.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's bring it back now. So they bring over these Nazi scientists. They bypass the visa requirements. Now what happens next? They're developing the rockets at White Sands base. He says, "Hey, I can put one of these. Maybe we can put one of these atomic bombs on this rocket." Now where are we with the development of technology?
So at this point in time, though, all these Nazis that are brought over are all supposedly non-Nazis, misunderstood Germans that have been rescued.
We didn't know.
We don't know what you're talking about. We are nice people. Could you imagine being the like Jewish refugee scientists that have come to the States and they're like working on these fucking in these aerospace, labs. And then all of a sudden fucking Werner von Braun walks in and you're just like, what? Like,
Hello?
Excuse me? Like, oh man, you'd be shitting
I
your
have
pants.
no problem with the filthy Jew. No problem at all.
That's my cousin.
The Allies, as they marched across Europe, like they were uncovering these facilities again. Like they recovered, people, prisoners, slave labor, like slaves that were working at Nordhausen. Like they helped these people, like people who had been there. I think that like they said like something like 30,000 people had died. Like of the 60,000 people that went to go work at the slave labor that went to work at Nordhausen, like half of them died. So 30,000 had died there. And it's like when they found that area, when they recovered that area, it was just like there were like corpses piled up like on the side of like railroad tracks and stuff and going inside the fucking base. It's just, yeah, it's like
it's hard because like, you know what, we'd like to try and make light of situations and have a little, a few jokes here and there, but like we can't take away from what happened. Like the shit that they fucking did was the most horrendous, horrible shit to ever happen in the history of the world.
Yeah, I won't reading through all this stuff, like we won't, I don't know how, like, I don't think we'll get into a lot of the details, but researching for this, it's like, it was just reading about a shitload of Nazi war crimes. Like, I was like, this is all insane. Like, this is the stuff that happened at some of these facilities is absolutely nuts. Like, if you can imagine, again, it's science without, without morals.
Yeah.
And it's without scruples. And dude, it's just like when you just let them loose and they're just like, yeah, we're tired of like, it's like, okay, we've experimented on a couple rats. Yeah. Bring some people in here. Yeah. Dude, bring them.
It's the oxygen deprivation experiments on people. Do we get to space without those experiments?
Fucking Strughold, one of the guys that they brought over with von Braun, experimented on hypoxic fucking oxygen deprivation tests with anyone from children to adults. Like, and he's the guy, he was the pioneer of the fucking spacesuit we used when we went to the moon.
It's like Andrew said, that a lot of these scientists would end up going on to pioneer a lot of the technology that would allow us to build like high altitude aircraft. A lot of the technology that allowed us to build craft that would take us to the moon.
You're not sending kids to space. Why are you testing on kids, motherfucker? There's no space kids. It's horrible.
That you know of.
Yeah. Ugh.
The experiments that these Nazi scientists that were eventually brought over to the United States to be put in positions of, directors of research facilities, military research facilities, civilian research facilities. I don't know if we want to get into it as far, but, a lot of them were founding members or they were very prominent members in NASA. Like when NASA was first started, a lot of these Nazi engineers and scientists were put in high positions.
Werner von Braun is directly responsible for the Saturn V rocket that led to the Apollo missions.
And he was a member of the SS, not just a Nazi, not just a card-carrying Nazi. He was part of the fucking SS.
And let's not forget for 1 second that this is a fact. As he's working in the States, Werner von Braun gets caught trying to give information to German military, German intelligence. And he's like, oh, I have the perfect excuse. Like, I've hid material that he needs to find. No big deal. It's like,
it's not a big deal. No,
it's not no big deal. No. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, he's reporting back to German, like, fucking generals and shit. I'm like, no one had an issue with that at all. Like, this is wild.
The excuses they made for this person, like we already talked about it. Grecki, one of the guys that would the Middelburg, where they were commissioning the V2 rocket. This is where it was getting built. This is where Jews were getting hung 5 at a time for being slow. Okay, Werner von Braun was working at this facility, overseeing things with this Grecki guy. this is where everything starts coming to light when things are sketchy, because Gricky gets brought up during the Nuremberg trials, and they're like, okay, we need to track this guy down and we need to try him for his fucking war crimes. They try to find him, and where do they find him? Fucking Huntsville in the States.
Well,
so he gets
and he was supposed to be in Germany. And then the USA was like,
yeah. So he's at the Wright
where
Patterson.
is he supposed to be? Germany? Whoops.
So they send over somebody to interrogate him to find out if he needs to be tried during the Nuremberg trials. They also say, you know what? We're going to bring in everybody that fucking worked for this prick. Who else worked with this prick? Werner von Braun. Okay, fantastic. You need to interrogate that fucker too, because we want to bring him back to Germany. Oh, so why can't... Did he get to interrogate Werner von Braun? Of course not. Why? Because he was on fucking vacation. They legitimately said this guy, they're like, no, sorry, he's out of town right now. And like, what do you fucking mean he's out of town? He's a prisoner of war, essentially, at this fucking base, working for you, and you gave him a weekend pass? The motherfucker's on furlough? Like, what do you mean?
A man who has committed atrocious war crimes or has been a part of committing atrocious war crimes, he's on vacation. It's his time.
I'm not golfing.
He's not getting paid. He doesn't have to be the interview.
They served up Grecki because he had obviously way less to fucking offer than von Braun. They protected von Braun until he fucking died. They didn't let anything fucking come out about any of these fucks until they died. These guys were heroes. Von Braun has a fucking like university dedicated to him, does he not? Like,
I wouldn't be surprised if something to do with like space exploration. He's got to have some type of memorial or something.
You have a number of prestigious awards in aeronautics and space exploration. Like a lot of those awards are actually named after former Nazi scientists.
It's bananas.
Researching for this, it was kind of incredible to see or read about the reports and accounts of how it's strange. Like you see these scientists, fellow scientists from the United States. Okay. It kind of gives you a little bit of perspective, is like how small the world was at that point. Like if you were a prestigious scientist, you had probably been through one of the universities in the United States. Like you had been through like MIT, or like you'd been through one of those, like at Boston, like Harvard, or one of any of those kind of big name big name universities or stuff like that. You'd been to Germany. College. Before the war had broken out, like actually a lot of the scientists that we had recruited in the United States, like who were studying biological or chemical weapons, they knew about these German scientists. Like these dudes were like celebrities to them. They had authored tons of papers. They had done, hundreds of studies, groundbreaking studies, when they that pushed the boundaries of science and people, extremely enlightening about different types of chemicals and how they interacted with either humans or how they interacted with the environment, anything like that. But when these scientists, you put these scientists
and
into
how
like
long
a military,
humans can live without breathing oxygen, like shit like that. Yeah.
Just really useful stuff. Really good stuff.
But some of them didn't know that, or some of them didn't. The United States scientists I'm talking about, they didn't know about some of these, or they hadn't been completely informed about some of these experiments. But like meeting these scientists, for some of them, was like meeting a fucking rock star. It was like, I have read things about you. Like I have based my whole career around the things that you have published. Like you guys are amazing. And the weird thing is like a lot of the German scientists and Nazi scientists, like these guys, they knew their value, and perhaps they didn't completely, I know you could make arguments that a lot of, I know I've read a couple of things where like Hitler actually had like held a type of admiration for the United States, like capitalist ideals, kind of all this weird shit about the United States. And, so he felt like philosophically, he felt that the Third Reich would get along with a lot a lot easier with the United States. So their ideologies and stuff would gel more with the United States. So when these scientists and stuff, interacted with, they had no problem like fitting in to America. Like once they switched over, and a lot of them had like an enormously easy time just switching allegiances. They're like, yeah, whatever, sure. Like, we don't care. Like, we don't Nazi, whatever. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, whatever. I don't care.
Well, they brought with them jobs, right? All these guys, Warner Brown Bond, he's got a giant facility made for him, which eventually, became the fucking labs that they created the fucking Saturn rockets and shit like that in. Like, they created jobs in Huntsville and wherever the places they went. You know what I mean?
For dummies like us.
These fucking guys, like to the scientists, these guys come over and they're like, listen, these fucking guys already broke a few eggs to fucking make the omelet. We don't have to do all these horrendous fucking tests because they did, and we know what happens to human beings when they're deprived of oxygen or when they go to these fucking sub-zero temperatures. You know what I mean? Like,
he's still creating jobs. He's got 4 idiots talking about him on a podcast.
Touche.
Right? Like, he's still creating jobs.
They created full industries, not just jobs, like entire new fields of of space travel and like all the different fields of science that go along with that. That all came over.
Yeah. Not even just that. I know Truman had hired, like, he had pretty much, when they started to bring or started to develop the idea of bringing over Nazi scientists, or at least taking the knowledge that was developed by Nazi scientists in Germany and bringing it over to the United States. I know he got the Department of Commerce on board to create a campaign to highlight the advantages and the advancements, not only in areas like military technology, but things like, being able to disinfect fruit or vegetables without heat, like being able to do that, being able to have non-run hosiery, ladies could wear stockings that wouldn't run, being able to build or create like synthetic rubber was a big thing. You would have these, you would create entire job sectors based around some of these technologies, and it would allow people to create their own businesses. Like it almost revolutionized the entire small business economy. People would be able to start their own businesses because resources and stuff would be cheaper and more available to everyone.
It's crazy. I don't know. Like, this one's tough for me, man, because it's like, yeah, what these people are guilty of was absolutely horrendous, and we can point the finger and blame, and they do deserve the blame. But like, it's not even just that. Like, you look back and you look at General Motors, Coca-Cola, Kodak, all these other like American companies that were profiting off the fucking Third Reich. You know what I mean? Like, this shit is just poison to its fucking core, man.
You could search the list of corporations that were complicit in the Reich's rise to power and through the war machine, and you could go forever. Like, all the auto manufacturers, all the chemical manufacturers in Germany, all those people, a lot of those companies are still in business today, and they were directly responsible for creating some of these, like the nerve agents, and like they had the facilities that were taken over by the party, but they were complicit in aiding these crimes against humanity. In the end, though, what comes out of it is like such scientific advancement that it pushes the world forward. Like, imagine like this World War II never happened. Where would we be like as far as technology? Like, would we be 50 years behind right now? Would we ever really discovered like a lot of the stuff, or we'd be just getting there now? Or
I know there's a couple arguments to be made about how like Soviet, like during the Cold War, like early days of the Cold War, you had the Soviets were doing their whole recovery of Nazi scientists and their thing, the competing, not just Operation Oswiecim, but there was a couple of their other ones. Operation Oswiecim was specifically, I think, about rocket technology, but as far as biological and chemical technologies, I think some of that stuff's still classified. There is a kind of argument to be like, the United States got, like, they retrieved a lot of these German scientists, and a lot of these German scientists went to go on and live their lives relatively carefree in the United States.
In high-ranking positions.
Right, in high-ranking positions. On the other hand, Operation Paperclip, like the Germans, the Nazis, former Nazis, were actually in the Soviet Union. They were treated as second-class citizens. Like when they did their projects, like they had no interaction with Soviet scientists almost at all. Like essentially the Soviets would squeeze every little bit of information to like translate these documents, put your shit on the fucking paper, and then talk to our scientists, and that's it.
Die.
And no, they wouldn't die. They'd be like, they actually sent them back to Germany. Like they would take them to Moscow and then they would just send them back to Germany, because then there was a whole nother thing. I mean, we probably won't get into today, but there's another one called like Operation Dragon Return. And that was the Allied operation to recover a lot of the scientists that the Soviets had taken prisoner and then returned to Germany, and then there was the United States or
because
they wanted
the U.S. wanted to find out what the scientists had given to the Soviets.
Exactly,
is what they were doing,
trying to double juice.
When you look at when I look at, it's so mind boggling to me, because when I look at those operations and I go, who handled the situations better? Like just from like looking at it, I'm going the Soviets, who treated these scientists like war criminals. Or the United States, who were like, come on in. You guys are our best friends. I'm like, to me, I'm like, the Soviets. The Soviets seems like they treated that how it should have been treated. And then even to get more into conspiracy realms, when you look at the fucking human experiments and shit they were doing on their own people and, their prisoners of war and stuff like that. And then you start to look what happened to the United States after World War II, we don't have to get into it, but like think about like things like Project MK Ultra, right?
Oh, totally.
In 1953, where they're doing human experiments on United States citizens. I'm like, that doesn't sound like the U.S. That sounds like shit that the Nazis were doing.
Well, look at the name itself, MK Ultra, mind control. The Nazis not even just Nazis. Germans didn't use C's; they used K's for C's. Like it's all over the fucking name.
Right.
Interesting. How unrealistic is it to imagine that when they're bringing over all these scientists and stuff, that the CIA hasn't, absorbed some of these scientists and been like, what were you working on in Germany? And you have free reign to let's work on some stuff here. And they come up with these kind of things.
Well, it makes perfect sense, because they were so fucking ashamed of it. They went to such lengths to fucking bury this shit until Dan, you'll probably know her name better than anybody, like that Linda Hunt, the fucking investigatory journalist, that little Zoolander quote.
Investigatory
journalist. Went after this for the Freedom of Information Act to get the actual facts for this fucking Operation Paperclip. And they're like, okay, yeah, you have a legal right to these documents. And they gave it to her. And they also gave her a bill for $125,000 for Xeroxing fees.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about FOIA requests where it's Freedom of Information Act in the United States. Like technically they can bill you for like research fees. So like if they have to go and retrieve the documents, they have to make the copies of the documents, they try to bill you. I think you can technically fight those in court, but yeah, they try to bill you for stuff they put you through a bunch of hurdles for
because they don't
stuff.
Want you to have the information.
Of course,
be honest.
Like,
yep.
So yeah. There's a ton of information about.
And here's
Operation
the thing. This is to me. I'm like, every single time we do one of these, and I mean, if you're not on our Patreon, me and Dan go through a lot of Cold War shit. And every single time we talk about Cold War operations like this, I go, this is the information that they're willing to give out, and we fucking know for certain that there's information they're like. It doesn't matter how many FOIA requests you make, that information's gone. We didn't even write it down.
We didn't even write
that shit down.
It doesn't exist anymore. Like that, right? Whatever you want to find is not there.
Yeah, a lot of the information that I got for researching for this case file was I gleaned from the book Operation Paperclip by Annie Jacobson, who's a journalist and author. And a lot of the information that she got, it's probably like the most recent information about Operation Paperclip. She got it from FOIA requests, and also she got it from actually talking to family members of the scientists.
The Dr. Blum, right?
Kniemeyer, Dr. Blum, like
his son.
Sons, grandsons of these scientists who still lived either in Europe or in parts of the United States. Like, she got information from talking to them about what their grandfathers fathers had done during the war, after the war and stuff like that. So she had put in a lot of work and everything. I would definitely recommend reading her book. It's a page turner. Like, if you want to learn more about Operation Paperclip, read her book. It's fucking fantastic. It's great.
She does a book on Area 51 as well. It's very interesting, and it touches on Operation Paperclip in that book. When looking into this one, it really makes me think about like what we know about Soviet Russia, because in Annie Jacobson's book Area 51, she talks about Russia really targeting aerospace engineers and like people who these brothers that were building revolutionary aircrafts. We get into it more on Operation Ovayakim or whatever the fuck it's called, but it makes me think how we're like when we look at the state of the world now, and we've talked about it on case file IRA, the Internet Research Agency. There's been recent documentaries about it, like The Social Dilemma and stuff, about like how much we're being manipulated right now by social media and how much of that is Russian influence. And it makes me think to back then when we were thinking that Russia was smashing, grabbing these scientists, maybe they were more interested in like the propaganda machine of Germany, right? Because Germany had a whole country like believing this ideology that the rest of the world, was like outside looking in, was like, what the fuck is going on? And now we see Russia like so into like influencing, ever since they were doing it from the 80s. We've talked about the old U.S. government creating AIDS was a Russian fake news story. They've been doing this for years and years unchecked, and they've perfected it. And I wonder how much was from maybe like propaganda agents that they recovered from Germany that were like, what were your steps? What they did? Like, what did they learn from Germany after World War II? Maybe that was some of the spoils of war that they got, was that's why they're light years ahead of us in this manipulation of like media.
Could very well be.
They also were like, what about Sputnik too? You know what I mean? Like they did pretty good.
Yeah, that's one of the arguments that I know Annie Jacobson has talked about in her book, or not in her book, but somebody asked her a question. I remember reading a YouTube video with her, or watching a YouTube video with her. They asked that question, and she said, yeah, the Soviets did pretty good with just taking the scientists and squeezing them for information and sending them back to Germany, and they did perfectly fine. They got to space before we did. I mean, they launched Sputnik before the United States did, and any other Western country did. They did relatively fine. So that raises, the question: could the United States or Western countries, could they have advanced as far as they did, as quickly as they did? Maybe by a couple years, but like I don't think it would have taken, when people say like the Nazis were decades or like 20 years ahead of us, like part of me thinks that I don't think so. Like, I think that the United States would have gotten
I think at the time, though, if you think at the time, like now, I don't think you could say that. I don't think you could say they were 20 years ahead of us. But like back in the 40s, you're like, they're 20 years ahead of us. They're in the 60s. If you think of the 60s and the 40s, you're like, yeah.
Yeah, and that's
really,
that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I was like, the United States, a joint project, the Manhattan Project, like producing the atomic bomb, one of the ultimate destructive technologies in the world. Like we were there. Like we were creating not only just that, but taking that technology and being like, okay, we could harvest the energy from these reactions. We could create nuclear reactors, those things. Maybe we wouldn't have devoted so many resources to space exploration. Maybe that's the thing. Like part of me wants to be like, well, maybe we would have concentrated more on just, getting energy, like producing energy and, like who the fuck, like we went to the moon and then what did we really fucking learn about the moon when we got there?
Cheese.
It wasn't made of cheese.
Big
It
ass
wasn't
rock.
made of cheese. That's the 100% fact that we learned. It wasn't made of cheese. And it's like, well, great. We spent $60 billion trying to get to the fucking moon to learn that it wasn't made of cheese. And, maybe we could have fucking flying cars at this point and portable nuclear reactors instead of trying to get to the goddamn moon.
But the moon race, like the space race, that also led to so many other new technologies that are not necessarily used only for space. Like wasn't it like the fucking latex suit came from that? Like the space suit and that technology of that like led to like hundreds of thousands of jobs and like huge economies and like just all the other stuff that, I mean, the space race, yes, like you got to the moon and whatever, but all the stuff that the development of computers and like all that stuff that needed to be done to get to the moon came from the space race. So you could make the other arguments that, yeah, the space race, maybe going to the moon might've been pointless, but the development of technology to get there, that was like a huge leap, right? That's like the same type of leap that happened in like 55 to 70 was the same that happened from like World War I to II, like huge leaps in tech.
Yeah. And you're absolutely correct. And I would totally back that. And the thing was like, there's also, I can't remember if it's an actual fact or whatever, but the kind of the leading strategy for the United States was like, when they analyzed the full capabilities of the Soviet Union, they're like, the only way we're going to be able to to beat them was economically. And it's like, if we try to tell them that we're going to the moon and they try to beat us in a competition to get to the moon, it will bankrupt them. And that was the whole reason for us trying to get to the moon was that.
So what you're saying is we faked it to bankrupt Russia, like I've been saying all along. Thank you, Dan.
Stanley Kubrick filmed.
Yeah, but we
filmed it.
actually got there. Like,
No, I agree with that.
But if we would have been like, we don't give a really. But that's the thing, though, because once you develop in ICBMs and things like that, and you have the technology to get to the moon, I think that was kind of the whole goal, because the one thing you want as a nuclear power is a place to launch missiles, not necessarily for a first strike, but for second strike. And if you had a base on the moon, like that's the ultimate second strike facility. That's the ultimate second strike site.
You can't knock them out.
Even if a country were to launch nuclear missiles at your country, it's like, hey, we have a base on the moon and we're going to launch all of those, even if it were just like, 10, 20 nukes, we're just like, yeah, that's the ultimate deterrent would be to have something on the moon. So I think that was one of the considerations for the Soviet Union, like trying to compete with us to get to the moon, space race. That was the whole thing, get a base on the moon. But once the United States got up there, it's like, there's no way we could build a facility on the moon. This is crazy.
Okay, let's, I think like this tangent could lead, we can go fucking everywhere with this,
We can go
but
forever.
So much more to talk about.
so like,
But yeah, Operation Paperclip brought Nazi scientists over,
Hashtag
opened a
look
can
it
of
up.
worms. Shit's everywhere. I mean, this is why at the beginning of the podcast called it the granddaddy of all conspiracies, because Operation Paperclip opens up into so many other secret military projects.
Yeah, dude.
People have asked
Nazi
us
Germany
about-
is still controlling the United States of America.
Is this, but like that to me is a conspiracy.
That's the Fourth Reich. Fourth Reich.
Did what we talk about, was this actually conspiracy? No, because this shit's real.
Happened.
This shit happened.
Conspiracy fact.
I mean, a
It's not
conspiracy
even a
doesn't have to be
conspiracy.
fake. Like a conspiracy is two or more people talking about whatever. Anyways, but this one breaks off too, and we can probably talk about them at another point. We'll probably talk about them down the road. It opens up into what people have asked us to talk about: Project Artichoke, Bluebird, MK Ultra leads. It leads into all that stuff. We're all pretty much offshoots. If Operation Paperclip was Venom, then like Carnage and the other symbiotes are all the other projects that came off of this thing. So it's
So
maybe
what you're
MK
saying is
Ultra
it's
is
the
like
best
Carnage.
symbiote.
I would say.
Paperclip's the best symbiote.
My final thought on Operation Paperclip is that it just still something. I mean, we can get into this conspiracy realm all day, but something just doesn't sit right with me with how the Allies and the West treated Nazi scientists compared to Russia. Like, we welcomed them with open arms, and we treated them. We put them in high-ranking positions, even though they were still reporting out, and we would catch them, and we would believe them when they would give us the reasons why they were reporting out. We were like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's totally fine."
We
already beat
did
Germany.
like after Eli Rosenbaum kind of pulled a lot of this bullshit to the light. We did rescind a lot of these awards, and you know what I mean.
Okay,
You know what
listen.
I mean?
If you took away any award from me that has already been given to me and I've got to celebrate when I got it, I could care less.
Yeah, well, but like
If
these
you
guys
called me
were
right now
also-
and you'd be like, "Hey, Braden, we found out you were juicing in the 2008 Shaw Cup Championship, and we just wanted to let you know that you no longer are the 2008 Shaw Cup champion," I'd be like, "Okay."
Yeah, but you were also banished from Kelowna, British Columbia, and sent back to your country away from your family and all that other shit. But okay.
But my final thought is like it just still blows me away that we treated the Nazi scientists better than we treated the Allies treated some of their own scientists that really turned the war. And like my case in point is like I just instantly looking at all these scientists that committed atrocious war crimes and were brought over, given safe haven. I just constantly thought of Alan Turing, who broke the Enigma code. We wouldn't be fucking anywhere without that guy, and they chemically castrated him because he was gay, and he was an ally scientist. And then the German scientists who are committing war crimes against the Allies are like, "It's all good, it's all good. Come on over, it's all good. We don't care."
Yeah, but all right, that's cool. But can you make rockets? No, okay, castrate them.
Yeah, castrate him. Yeah, you solved the Enigma code. What have you done for us lately, though?
Exactly.
I mean, he was
anybody
the
get to the
father.
moon.
Yeah, I mean, and also he's like the father of artificial intelligence. Like,
Yeah,
He started the computer.
it's like, dude, that guy was treated so fucking unbelievably poorly for the what he gave in his life. It's mind-boggling to me how we treated the war criminals, and that's what they were, war criminals. Right? Yep. They were doing atrocious tests on human. And you can justify it all you want of like maybe we wouldn't be where we are today without these atrocious war crimes. But these people should have paid a price, and they didn't. They lived a full life and were fine.
Should have paid the iron price.
Yeah. Like it's crazy for me to think that these people could do the things they do and get off scot-free because everyone was like, well, you know some things we don't know. So
not everyone, not everybody. They hid this shit. They buried that shit deep.
And it to be honest, like if this is information that is like widely available, that is true, factual, like fact. This is fact. What don't we know about what was like going on behind the scenes back then? Because we know the military was going against executive orders right then and there. That's all I have to say is the military was going against executive orders. So there's a shadow government that was operating against the United States, the wishes of the United States government. So that's all. Like, what don't we know?
Strings.
Someone was pulling the strings, and this is the tip of the iceberg. And what we might find out in the future, I can't even fathom what was going on back then.
No, that's nothing. A shit ticket got us to the moon. It's not a big deal. That was just happenstance. Didn't mean to happen. No big deal.
Done.
Zell, final thoughts?
Final thoughts, Braden?
Yeah. So Braden gave his last final thoughts for like 15 minutes.
I know. I was waiting. It was funny. No, I find it very strange that, I mean...
I got one more final thought, actually. Fuck you, Zell.
Me?
I'm done. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I mean, I find it strange. I mean, Braden, you said that we treated, you said Nazis in general, but it was just like it was a small group. It's not like, if it was Fourth Reich, I would say like they would have welcomed Nazis over to America, and they but they didn't. They just did the scientists.
did.
No, but they did. I'm saying like it didn't say like if you're a Nazi, come to America. This is the Fourth Reich. They took the scientists. It's brutal.
They took the valuable Nazis.
The ones that could help them grow their war machine
and put them in influential positions.
Yeah, so it's super strange. I 100% agree that they brought them over, and these Nazi scientists ended up heading some of the biggest programs in the United States. Like, especially like von Braun and NASA, like that shit's fucking crazy. And like when you tell people that, they're like, "No, can't be." What? Nazis started the space program? Like, oh, he didn't start it, but he had a direct effect on how the rockets were built, how we got up there. But it is strange that this like giant corporations and all these people who profit off war, when they see, it seems like when they see like the war is ending and the tide is turning, they just kind of shift gears and keep making profits for a different side. So like if you go conspiracy route, like if you go like shadow government or like the string pullers, like I haven't been down
Puppet masters.
Yeah, the puppet masters, man. I haven't been down the rabbit hole like that in a while where you're like, all right, you have giant wars and these corporations are making billions of like all this money and all this power, and then they just shift and everyone's like, yeah, they're fine. Next. So yeah, I mean the whole thing is just you could spend a lot of time going down each like rabbit hole of Paperclip and all its subsidiaries, but yeah, hashtag look it up. It's fucking bananas that all this happened back then. This led to like pretty much all the tech we have. A lot of the tech we have now comes directly from World War II. And all
basically anything that's not alien is from Nazi Germany.
Or everything from
Where do the Nazis get it from?
Or
Aliens.
the Nazis got it from the aliens.
That's what I'm saying. Oh man.
You get into all that other weird, like the Vril Society and all that other weird shit that goes along with Nazi wonder weapons and where they got all that shit
They
from.
were all into the occult. They
Yeah.
were all into fucking aliens. They were all into all that shit.
Yeah. Anyways, Andrew, thoughts?
Well, I caught a little flack today on a review for not being open to all theories. So I'm going to say aliens, Bigfoot, motherfucking zombies, vampire, all of it. Every theory, all in one.
Boom.
But no, seriously, I definitely believe too much shit just like attributing all this stuff to happenstance just doesn't make sense to me. I think that list got into their hands intentionally. I think they were even given some information and they wanted that information to survive. They didn't want that fucking information to die with the Third Reich. They wanted that information to continue going on because they were on the brink of something big. And I think they succeeded in what they were on the brink of. And that's my honest opinion.
There you go. Danny boy?
Like I wouldn't go ahead and try to justify the actions of the people that are the actions of that were committed by the United States government. I wouldn't go that far. I hope that what we've talked about is kind of added context and add a little bit of extra context. Like people want to be like, the U.S. government knew about this. I'm like, yes, the United States government knew about it. There were people within the United States government that were fighting against this action, like bringing these Nazi scientists over. There were people in the State Department. I know the president, but the president also had to consider the very real possibility that they were, what is it, 1946, that they were 6 years away from total war. Like they very much thought it was very much a possibility that they could have like atomic, biological, chemical war against the Soviet Union. And that was a very real possibility in their minds. Like we were going to be going to war with this giant country that is Russia, the Soviet Union. So, I would go to say that like there was almost like no choice at that point, that you were a very real, threat to your country, to your ideologies, things like that. I can't fault them for some of the stuff that they did. And I'm also, when I went for researching this, you don't even know like how much some people knew about what some of these Nazi scientists did at the time. Now we know all this information. A lot of this information has been declassified, things like that. Like there are files that are still classified until 2024, I believe. Some of them have been declassified as recent as 2012. But the people, when they brought some of these scientists over, people were, they very much, the United States military, the people who worked with these people, the military had whitewashed their records. They're like, no, they didn't know anything. They were just scientists trying to do their best. Like they were trying to survive in Nazi Germany. They weren't part of it. Yes, but most of them were fucking
Part of it.
Nazi war criminals.
Nazis.
Not all,
Yeah.
but most.
Like 90% of them.
All of them.
Were fucking. And at the end of the day, I fucking hate Nazis.
Fuck Nazis.
Fucking hate them. We didn't even go into for research of this. I read a fuck ton about fucking Nazi war crimes, and I fucking hate Nazis. I hate them.
Fucking nightmares, man.
I hate them. I hate them all. Fucking nightmare machines. I fucking hate all of them. Fuck Nazis. Fuck them all.
Fuck them.
Yeah.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yep.
Holocaust deniers, you too. Get the fuck out of here. I don't give a fuck about you guys too. Fuck off.
We're not saying punch a Nazi, but just, maybe.
Yeah, if you see a Nazi,
Just maybe,
If people tell you that the Holocaust isn't real, yeah, fuck those people too.
punch them.
Okay. You know what's fucking okay. You know what? I'll save that story for after hours. It's not a main show appropriate story. But I got a story about a history class I was in grade 12. Wild.
Oh,
Made the
think,
news.
Right.
Made the news.
I think I know the story you're about to talk. You're going to tell.
My mind's already blasting. I wasn't even sure you got your grade 10. So the fact that you're in a grade 12 history class, that's fucking impressive.
I sat in.
Okay.
Let's do space news. Let's do a little space news. I'll save the UFO case file of the week for next week. If you ever wanted to throw a rock and hit Mars, now is your chance to get the closest you will ever get. So go outside, find Mars with your Skywatcher app, and fucking hurl a rock at that motherfucker, because you're never going to get closer to hitting it than this week. For the
Throw
next
it straight up
15
in the
years.
air and look up.
And look up.
It's only going to be
Totally safe.
It's only going to be a mere 62.1 million kilometers away, or
That's it?
38.6 million miles.
But
I
listen,
mean, it's relatively next door. I mean,
Uncle Rico could hit that shit, no problem.
yeah, he would throw a fucking football fucking
tight
over the
spiral
mountains.
Over them, their
right
mountains.
at that shit. Dead center.
So that's the closest Mars is going to be for the next 15 years. So it's going to be easy to see. It's going to be very bright in the sky for the next couple of nights. If you got a telescope, fucking use it, man. This is the time. Give Mars a old look. But like I said, just go outside, fucking hurl a rock in the air, and just know you will never get closer to hitting Mars with a fucking
You'll
rock.
never be able to
How
throw
cool
a rock
is that?
closer.
Like, listen, you go out and throw a rock tonight, and then go tomorrow and be like, fuck, I almost hit Mars. That's the closest I've ever come to hitting it. It's not a lie. That's not a lie
that's
if
legit.
you say that after you throw a rock straight in the air. It's not a lie.
Yep.
So unless for the next 15 years you train that fucking arm, and 15 years you got a cannon, and you throw it even further in 15 years. You're
Chuck
like, that's
that
You
shit
look
close
at,
to
like, you
Mars.
gotta have like an armathy, like from
Yeah.
fucking Rick and Morty. You need an armathy.
I like that
I
reference.
thought that was some excellent space news. What else I have? Oh, we talked about it last week. This is a little fitting. The astronauts have finally located the elusive leak on the ISS.
Oh, they found it.
They did.
They found it. They had already narrowed it down to the two Russian modules I think we talked about last week. And
Did you say Russian modules?
What Russian modules?
That's what happens when you give your fucking Nazi scientists back to fucking
Should have kept him.
Should have kept him. We wouldn't have had a leak.
So the leak was on the Zvezda service module, and it was found by cosmonauts Anatoly Ivanishin and Ivan Wagner. So it's
Perfect.
now. So it hasn't been announced if it's fixed or not, but they found it. They know where the leak is.
Well, they
They're currently working on
They
it.
know the leaks in that module. They haven't found precisely where it's leaking, but they know it's leaking in that module. So they are working on finally nailing that down. So
And I love this. I love this because they're like, listen, the ISS always leaks a little air. And I was like, when I read that, I was like, huh? What? It's always leaking. I was, this motherfucker is old. We gotta get something out there that doesn't leak anymore. This is crazy.
Some new hotness.
Yeah.
It's old and busted. We need new hotness.
Well, they're going to be putting that one between the Earth and the Moon. What are they calling it?
Yeah.
Artemis? Project
SO,
Artemis?
or I think
Artemis.
it's called Max. Fast gas.
Circle K?
I don't remember. Circle K.
Space K.
I mean, it might be a Space K on Artemis.
I hope so.
This is
sweet.
this space news I got here. This is a little foreshadowing to next week.
Ooh.
Astronomers say they've detected a rogue Earth mass planet drifting in the Milky Way. Dun dun dun. Could this be Nibiru, the fabled Planet X? Who knows?
Who knows?
Maybe.
I mean, is it in our sun's orbit?
It's a no. It's a rogue
It's drifting
planet.
in the Milky Way anywhere. It could be, Dan, it could be anywhere.
Drifting in the Milky Way? That's like, it's huge.
Dan,
Dan.
it could be anywhere.
It's a rogue
You don't
planet,
know?
unbound to any star, so it could go anywhere.
Dan, let me ask you a question. Dan, 1,000 kilometers from Earth, is that in the Milky Way?
I mean, yes.
Oh, shit. So it could be there because no one knows where it is. It's drifting in the Milky Way. It's mysterious.
Well, they have an
That's
idea
what
where
I'm
they
saying.
is.
I'm like, but is it in the orbit of our star?
No, it's unbound by any star. It says. That's what they think, at least.
It goes where it wants, when it wants.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure, it could be.
Basically, I only brought this one up because we're going to be talking about Planet X or Nibiru next week. So I thought of be interesting. We're always talking about
Yeah, it's cool.
you know,
It's-
the
it's-
rogue.
Could be.
Planet
could be
X.
Nibiru.
It's
Why not?
there's two different organizations working on this. The OGLE, the Optical Gravitational Lensing Experiment, collaborating with the KMTN, Korean Microlensing Telescope Network. And they're
Sweet.
getting good at finding objects in space that emit no light of their own. And they figured there's something out there. It's about somewhere between the size of Mars and Earth. So a fairly decent size ball of rock floating out there, deep space.
Yeah, I wonder how many like fucking weird rogue planets are just like whipping around. I mean, if you think about it, like there could be tons of them just like whipping around out there.
Yeah, you get lost by the gravitational pull of the sun or whatever, and then just flying
Yeah, or
around
your
way out
fucking
there.
sun goes supernova and you're sitting on not so much like within the Goldilocks region, like you're not an Earth-like planet,
No.
but if you're sitting on the outside, maybe like, and your sun goes supernova or you manage to form
Hey, the
when
core.
your sun like burns out.
Next week we're talking about Nibiru. The core forms, it's a molten core. It produces heat. You can live on it. Maybe it has some type of weird atmosphere. I don't fucking know.
And
Yeah.
don't forget, if you want to listen to us talk about Planet Nibiru and Planet X, you're going to have to head over to Spotify because that's where we're talking about Nibiru and Planet X next week on Alien Theorists Theorizing. That's all I had for space news. Does anyone else have anything else?
I mean, I don't have space news, but I got world news.
Boo.
World's
Yeah,
in
I would
space.
say boo too, Dan. Canada's suffered a fucking act of war.
Oh, that's right. We're marching.
Fucking garbage.
Oh,
Goddamn Canadian legend was assaulted in New York City. Rick Moranis sucker punched. That's it.
Was it a random attack?
listen.
A random attack.
Yeah.
That's it. No, it wasn't a random attack. It was an act of
hate
war.
Ghostbusters.
It was a
It was an
goddamn
act
act
of
of
war.
war. It's bullshit.
This is a call to all Canadians to take up arms, and we're storming. We're just continually storming south until we catch the perpetrator. We'll go as far south as we need to.
well, you know what? Maybe we'll.
So this
burn
is
down-
your notice right now, motherfucker. You listen good. You turn yourself into authorities before we find you.
Grab
Or
your
we'll
hockey
burn the
stick.
White
stick.
House
Justice.
out, buddy. We'll burn the White House down again. We've done it.
We're gonna
before,
burn
we'll do it
everything
again.
south of the 49th.
Yeah.
We're gonna burn everything. We're gonna burn it all down
Grab your hockey
until we
stick.
find the
before
attacker
us
of
go.
Rick
do it
Moranis.
again.
Get ready to get fucking jerseyed, America.
You know what the last thing you're ever gonna hear is? Coo, 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 coo.
We're coming. March.
Yeah.
The 39 million man march.
You guys think a storm's coming? This is fucking storm's coming, eh?
Yeah,
You
right
got
here.
fucked up
I'm
now.
coming to get you.
Vicious and delicious right here, buddy. You don't want none of this.
Anyways,
That
yeah,
was fucking terrible. Mick Moranis is a fucking Canadian hero.
we don't stand for that.
Punched in New
We
York.
don't stand for that around here.
Do we have a theory of the week? We do.
Oh,
If I can just close, I literally went to open the page, and as I slid over, hit the X, closed the window.
those eyes are getting a little googly over there. That might be what's going on.
It's because I've had way too much drink.
Too much of that Spotify cider you've been
Spotify cider.
Yeah, at Spotify cider, the Spotify exclusive cider. Your drink here basically is what I've been drinking. All right, there it is. The amount of work this girl went into to make sure her husband got a shout out on the beginning of this episode. Our theory of the week is Jessica Fulop. Good on you. Like the amount of time she reached out to make sure she wanted to get her husband a shout out, followed up, messaged us, was very polite, just absolute beauty. Really stood out for me. That's why we gave the husband a shout out at the beginning of the show. So Jessica Fulop, you are our theorite of the week. You can always hold that over your husband's head.
Yep.
Forever. He got a shout out, but you're the theorite of the week. So you're fucking beauty. Thanks for reaching out to the show, and hope you guys have a great second wedding anniversary on October 13th from your friends at Alien Theorists Theorizing.
And now that's not something we do often. So if you want to shout out, you got to really work for it, because if we start doing it every week, can't do it. So if you want to shout out,
listen,
you
if you
work.
email us and be like, hey, give me a shout out or give this person a shout out.
Tough.
Well, if you subscribe to our Patreon, you get an automatic shout out.
That's true.
Get your name read.
You can pay for your shout out.
You want an easy way?
I mean,
You pay for your shout out. And I think that's the last thing we're going to do tonight is do a little Patreon shout out. What? So let's see. Get my music going
We
here.
paying the new Patreon shout out song?
Got a new Patreon shout out song. Second week of this. Here we go. Patreon supporting the week of, what is it, September 28th to October 5th. We got Roll Quest. We got Toxic 0320. Jessica Carnivore. Kyle Weir. One Down, 5 Up Girl. Diane Rhodes. Trent Robertson went up to the top tier pledge. We salute you. Woo! Kenneth
Salute.
Godinez. Douglas Finn. Nolan Hansen. Disco Sasquatch.
well, that's a good name.
And Jamie Ward. Those are the newest patrons of the week. Patrons of the week? I've never said that before. But that's what you are.
And if you want to get on our Patreon, go to patreon.com/Alien Theorist Podcast. And as we say at the end of these things, keep those eyes on the skies.
That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable.
Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today.